Good morning and welcome to San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Citizen Advisory Committee meeting. We'll do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, here are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make public comment. So we'll go ahead and go with roll call.
Okay, good morning. Mr. Cunha.
Yes.
Ms. Zimmerman. Mr. Clark. Ms. Brown. Brian Medeiros. Ms. Gutile.
Present.
Thank you. Chris Medeiros. Amy Lopes. Roger Hofdahl.
Here.
Mr. Savage.
Here.
Mr. Rios.
Here.
Mr. Sanders.
Here.
Ms. Deming. Mr. Sanchez. Ms. Nebeker. Mr. DeHart. Ms. Holmes. Mr. Liba. Ms. Agers. Here. Mr. Tristo.
Here.
Ms. Fast. Mr. Tuttle.
Here.
Mr. Cryer.
Here.
Ms. Matthews.
Here.
Mr. Trost. Mr. Amabil. Mr. Moran. Mr. Cantu.
Here.
Mr. Fisher. Ms. Hernandez. Mr. Dennis Medeiros. Mr. Meister. Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we have item number 4, approve minutes for March 3rd, 2026 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions from the members to the minutes previously submitted for the March 3rd, 2026 CAC meeting? Any changes or remarks in Fresno? Seeing none. Any in Bakersfield? Seeing none. Any in Modesto? Okay, seeing none.
I'll call for public comments on that.
Thank
Are
you.
there any public comments on the minutes in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments on the minutes?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none and no indication online.
Okay, so hearing none, the minutes are approved as submitted. We'll go ahead and move on to item 5, public comment. This time is provided for members of the public on matters within the Citizens Advisory Committee's jurisdiction, both on and off the agenda. Members of the public are requested to reserve comments on agenda items 4 and 10 through 12 until those items are heard. Each of those items will include a separate opportunity for public comment at that time. Please note that state law prohibits the board from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Okay, Bakersfield, do you have any members of the public that would like to comment?
No public comment in Bakersfield?
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments?
No public comments in Modesto.
Are there any, seeing no members of the public in Fresno? No indication of any online comments.
Thank you. So go on ahead and move on to item 6, chair comments. I don't have many other than thanking everyone for showing up and making sure that we had quorum today to do business. So thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item 7, executive director comments.
Good morning, Chair. Shiraz Gill, Deputy APCO here. We'll be leading the CAC today. Just have a couple of things here. The first one is our governing board accepted $1 million in funding from the Tulare County Association of Government to support programs within Tulare County for 3 specific programs: a tune-in, tune-up vehicle repair program, the drive clean and the San Joaquin vehicle replacement program, and the Charge Up Electric Vehicle Charger Incentive Program. So very successful programs and really help residents of Tulare County out. Of course, we have our other district-wide program still going on as well. The district also completed the end of the season the wood burning season, end of February, and we've completed our report. It's a very comprehensive wood smoke reduction strategy. We're hoping to bring that to to the CAC at the next meetings to present how the season went. So look forward to that. We're continuing advocacy efforts. As you know, we need critical funding for many of our programs, and the CAC has already provided a support letter to the legislator to make sure that the Valley gets its fair share of funding. So we're continuing that effort. The May revised budget will come out next month, so we'll see what it includes there. But a lot of work still happening in that area. The district is also working on our annual report to the community. Every year we put this very comprehensive report together for 2025. We had a lot of achievements, so the report will highlight all of the programs, all of the things that were achieved the previous year, including air quality metrics and data. We'll be presenting a draft copy to the board at the next board hearing here in the next couple of weeks. And then soon thereafter, we'll come back to the CAC and provide that report as well. So it's a very cool report. It has great illustrations on it and something that the community can really quickly see what achievements have been made in regards to air pollution. That's all I have.
Are there any questions in Bakersfield? Or comments? Any questions or comments in Modesto? Any questions or comments here in Fresno?
I just need to know, is he the new director now, or?
No, he did.
He said deputy?
Yeah, he did.
Oh,
I
okay, I
didn't.
missed
He
that
did.
part. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
I was just, I didn't know what was happening here.
Very important clarification. Thanks,
I read
Megan.
and then I looked
Yeah.
up, so I apologize. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item 8, verbal report from California Air Resources Board, CARB. Shayla.
Sorry, let me try to get Shayla lined up. I believe through the chair, CARB panelists, I'm sorry, CARB representative asked to switch items 10 and 8 for time sensitivity for the presenter for number 10.
So then we'll go ahead and do item 10, SB 253 and 261 presentation.
Yes, go ahead. I'm going to actually let Shayla go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. We actually were hoping to swap places with item number 11 so that
Oh.
Michelle could go for the mobile source update. She just has a hard stop at 11:20.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and do item number 11, mobile source update.
Thank you. And I believe Michelle should be on as a panelist.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Now the next step is to be able to share my screen here. Let's see. And do you now see my screen?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, perfect. Good morning. My name is Michelle Buffington. I am the Chief of the Mobile Source Control Division here at CARB. First of all, I just want to thank you all for inviting me to be here with you today. I'm excited to be able to talk to you about the work that we're doing here in the division, what we do, why we do it, and what we're currently doing. And then I'd be happy to listen to comments and answer any questions that you all may have. Oops. So for a little bit of background about the Mobile Source Control Division, first I maybe want to point out I've had this job and I've been in this role for about 9 months now. And so I'm still relatively new in the grand scheme of things when it comes to being the division chief of this particular division, though I have a 19-year career history here at CARB doing a variety of things. I wanted to maybe just give you a little bit of background about the Mobile Source Control Division and what it is that we do. So as a division, we develop and implement statewide strategies that reduce smog-forming pollutants. And we do that to protect public health while recognizing and considering the impacts on California's economy. We do that through a handful of tools. This division builds the light duty, medium duty, heavy duty, and off-road engine and vehicle regulations. We also have a suite of on-road and off-road fleet rules. There are teams here that work on our mobile source incentive programs, and we also have been developing non-monetary incentives as well. We do this in close partnership, not just with other divisions here at CARB, but also with our sister agencies, our partner air districts, businesses, communities, nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, researchers, and the broader public. And with that data-backed science and through collaboration, the division crafts these regulations that I just talked about. But why do we do this? We do this because California has the worst air quality in the nation. Due to the geography, the population, the major transport corridors, and the ports. Millions live in areas not meeting federal ozone and particulate matter standards, resulting in significant health impacts. And the recent federal actions targeting California's clean air and SIP programs threaten that required emission reduction commitment. So I'm assuming that you probably all have seen this, that our air quality planning and science division has done a really good job trying to categorize or quantify what the federal actions will do to our attainment strategies. The most recent NOx emission modeling highlights the effects that the current attacks on CARB regulations will have in 2037. This showcases the predicted damage to air quality progress in California without additional statewide efforts and underscores the remaining 165 ton per day gap in emission reductions needed to make up those losses. With this potential impact, CARB is working with our partners to find new ways forward. And here is an example of the ways forward. So the Executive Order N2725 reaffirmed California's commitment to clean air and zero emission vehicles. It directed CARB to create new emission cutting regulations and prioritize clean air aligned vehicle purchases. We launched the SJVAPCD dialogue to gather public feedback and received input on affordability, reliability, and access. In fact, I'd like to again thank the San Joaquin Valley Air District for hosting us for one of those dialogues. It was incredibly insightful and helpful to be there and hear what the attendees had to say. We then produced a report in 2025 with the findings, and that report now guides the work called Drive Forward, which is CARB's next phase of rules and incentives. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through kind of the in-depth responses to ZEV Forward or all of the initiatives in Drive Forward, but I am going to talk a little bit about the regulatory efforts and the incentives discussions that we've had recently. So first, I'm going to touch on the Drive Forward vehicles. These aim to cut emissions from both the light duty and heavy duty sectors. As these standards are developed, the goals are to protect our most vulnerable populations, design programs that achieve cost-effective emission reductions, and incentivize early action and ensure real-world emission reductions. The first light-duty workshop was held on October 21st, 2025, where staff provided information on the scope of the new rulemaking, the timeline, and the process for submitting comments. Additional light-duty workshops are planned for 2026, with community meetings scheduled for mid-2026. The first heavy-duty workshop was held on December 3rd of 2025, where staff provided information on the scope of the new rulemaking, the timeline, and the process for submitting comments. The next heavy-duty workshop is planned for sometime around mid-2026. With that, I will show you a graphic that talks about all of the different incentive programs that we have here at CARB, some of which are implemented in partnership with our regional partners, the air districts, and some of which are statewide run and through either CARB ourselves or a third-party administrator. You can see that there are 6 key programs here on the CARB monetary incentives. And you can see that they demonstrate here what the criteria is or the type of emission reductions they're targeted to get by legislation, and also how they are funded. So we have programs like the Air Quality Improvement Program, that is criteria pollutant focused and air toxic reduction focused. That is now funded through till July 1st of 2035, meaning that every year we will see an annual appropriation in the budget to be able to support that program. Carl Moyer is another program that is annually funded, again, funded through January 1st of 2034. That one is one of the programs that we do on a regional level with the air districts, with our partners. The Volkswagen dollars were a one-time appropriation, and they were focused on NOx mitigation and zero emission projects. Assembly, the AB 617 program or the CAP program is funded through 2045. The farmer program is, and the next 2 programs, so both farmer, the funding agricultural replacement measures for emission reductions program and the low carbon transportation program are not continuously funded. So we do rely on annual appropriations for those programs. I wanted to highlight that this year, the governor's proposed budget in January allocated $200 million for a light duty ZEV consumer product, approximately $35 million for the Air Quality Improvement Program, approximately $130 million for the Carl Moyer Program, and $177 million for the Community Air Protection Program. Before I conclude my presentation, though, I wanted to provide an update on the Heavy Duty Inspection and Maintenance Program, also known as Clean Truck Check. The Clean Truck Check program involves reporting annual fees and periodic emissions tests applicable to diesel and alternative fuel heavy-duty trucks and buses with a gross vehicle weight rating over 14,000 pounds that operate in California. On January 26th or 27th of 2026, the US EPA announced its partial disapproval of the state implementation plan relating to Clean Truck Check. This means that the state cannot credit the portion of emission reductions from out-of-state vehicles as part of meeting federal air quality standards. This decision does not extend to determining or enforcing any part of the Clean Truck Check to ensure all vehicles operating in California abide by the same rules, including vehicles registered outside of California. Clean Truck Check program requirements are in effect for subject vehicles, including vehicles registered outside of California, when operating in the state, to report, pay an annual compliance fee, and submit required passing testing emissions tests. And so with that, I wanted to perhaps leave you with some contact information, the general homepage for the Air Resources Board, the helpline where you can email and receive information and support, as well as the work related to the Drive Forward standards, the Drive Forward website, and again, the email address for that. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and again, happy to answer any questions you may have or receive any of the comments or feedback that you'd like to give.
Thank you. Are there any questions in Modesto? See none. Any in Bakersfield? Also seeing none. Any here in Fresno? Manuel?
Sorry. Thank you, Michelle, very much. Good morning, Manuel Cunha here. The question, I think the last statement is the one that, and I have another question, and I'm trying to see what presentation it would fall into, but the out-of-state trucks has become a big issue for our packing houses and for our meat deliveries. And that means coming into California, do they have to have an inspection? They have to pay a $30 fee to come into the state to go get food, to feed the world, to feed the people, which is a security issue. But in saying that, is that not the case that has been removed and that out-of-state trucks do not have to do an inspection and do not have to pay the $30 fee. Is that what I've heard in the last couple of weeks? Is that not true?
What is required is that trucks that are operating in the state need to do a smog check, do the emissions testing, and pay the fee and be in compliance with the regulation.
Those trucks that are registered with California that operate in our state, and they may go outside, would meet that requirement. But if a truck comes from New York City, it delivers a product load in here and then loads up at a packing house to go out of the state, is that truck required, being that it entered the domain line of California, that he or she would have to pay and register? They're not registered in California. They are registered in New York.
If they
And
are,
they come here.
regardless of where they're registered, if they are operating in the state, they would have to report and pay that annual compliance fee and would be required to pass the emissions tests.
Then we're going to have a war of products rotting. Nothing worse than a rotten chicken in a truck because it has to sit at a smog check someplace in California. But the worst, Michelle, was going to happen, and we heard this last week, is that they may not be coming to California to pick up our products because of this issue and because of the time of delay of when it has to be to the markets, and the availability of such weigh stations or check stations is a real problem. Tied with that, Michelle, and I don't know if it's in your domain, is the TRUs is now the second big fight. As I heard yesterday, I actually got a call from a shipping company out of Chicago, and they have reefer units, and they have 1,500 trucks that they move throughout the United States. And they were told that the packing house here, if the packing house did not hire the truck, but the buyer did, that when that truck entered California with that TRU, you have to check that TRU to see if it's qualified to be in California. And that burden could be on the packing house. I would totally disagree with that. I don't think any of our packing houses would want a staff person from the refrigeration cold storage unit to jump on a truck's axle on the tires to go read the model if that's a qualified or not. So the discussion yesterday was that then maybe it's time that we don't come to California anymore. By our the packers are going to be responsible for what comes into this state. I believe that food should not be in any jeopardy of by the state of California to be telling our buyers or telling the farmers that we already have enough of a problem, and we are doing our part with the farmer program and the belated ag burn problem. Is there anything that we can, or are we just going to let it crash? And when the truckers aren't going to come here and the fruit and the vegetables and the chickens will just sit in cold storage, and our farmers will have a real serious problem. We already got a problem with high fuel. Is there any discussions within CARB about the liability? I told my packer yesterday, do not have your staff climb a private truck axle and to check the ID number. And especially at night, they're not going to go out into the parking lot and go climb up and take a flashlight to read if the reefer unit is legal or not, because of the liability. That person falls off that truck and the trucker is sued, the packing house is sued, and what the heck is the person looking for? Are they looking for if there's a reefer, or is there a bunch of ice inside of a big old container that has ice? It's like a big chunk of ice, you know, the way that we used to do it with horses. So is there any word? I know that's not, probably the TRUs is not part of it, but we're headed for a hell of a disaster. And if my farmers can't ship products then I will say this lively. Everybody's hearing it. Then it's time for agriculture to shut the entire country down and stop shipping agricultural products across this country and put it on the hands of the California Air Resources Board. Because my farmers are not going to take it anymore. And if they can't move their product because of rules that were never thought of correctly, and telling my two countries, Canada and Mexico, that they can't come in here at all now, is a trade war that we don't need. We already have other wars in this country, in this world. So that long dissertation, I apologize to all the board members and to the district staff. And I know, Michelle, I thank you for your presentation this morning and your time, but I don't know where the TRU sit, and I don't know where this reporting requirement sits as well, because they're not going to do it. And maybe we don't need to eat for a couple of weeks, and maybe we can live on pine nuts and lawn clippings. So thank you.
Were
So
there any
may-
other questions or comments? Go ahead.
May I give a response?
Sure.
All right, great, thank you. So first of all, I would just want to make sure to point out that when trucks come into the state, they are not sitting waiting at the border to get smog checked. So I want to make sure that that's clear. And if you are hearing that that is happening, it would be really helpful and beneficial if you could send us that information directly so that we can investigate what's going on to make sure that it is not on us. Because that's not our intention. The intention of the rule is to protect public health, and we are monitoring and regulating the emissions that occur within the state. So if you're hearing that we are impeding the flow of goods and services, please, again, let us know so that we can look into that. You're right, Manuel, correct, that TRUs are not within the Mobile Source Control Division. And I'd be happy to make sure that your comments about the TRUs get back to that team, and perhaps make sure that there's their opportunity for you to have some conversations with them about your experiences.
Great. You won't be, if not, you won't have those nice peaches and that nice prime rib or that nice chicken leg. It may be a little bit older. But thank you, Michelle, very much. I look forward to hearing from a person, a human being out of the TRUs. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Trusso?
Michelle, thank you for the presentation. My question is, my understanding is that the California Highway Patrol is normally responsible for enforcement on the highways. Is the Highway Patrol responsible for enforcement of the truck regulation rule for those trucks entering into the state?
That's an excellent question. I don't believe that they are enforcing the clean truck check. If a trucker receives a citation, it is coming from the California Air Resources Board.
I guess the premise of my question is, how is enforcement conducted? You have a trucker from out of state who comes into the state. Is he inspected at the border entry, or how is the truck discovered to be non-compliant?
I believe that the truck is checked at the border, and if it is not within the database as being compliant, they receive a written citation, and then they are allowed to move on to do their business from the perspective of the clean truck check regulation.
Okay. If they're at the border and they receive a citation, are they allowed to enter the state? even
They
though
are
they're
not prohibited.
non-compliant?
Correct. They are
Okay.
allowed to enter the state.
And if they enter the state, they can conduct their business and then leave. They just have a citation to address.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. I was just wondering how this enforcement occurred.
Mr. Sanders, did you have something?
I do. To piggyback on this line of questioning, which is very informative, thank you very much. Do we have any idea what the price of that citation is? I mean, is it get bigger the more times you break the rule, or?
I don't have that information at the tip of my fingers, but I'd be happy to get back to you with that response.
Yeah, usually Katrina's good about sending everything out, so I look forward to that. I
Okay.
also have a couple comments. Is this a good time to make them, Madam Chair?
If they're pertaining to this item, yes.
They are. So We're speaking in regards to driving clean transportation forward. So where I'm at with this is I was reading Stephen Cliff's letter to Lauren Sanchez and other people of the Air Board. And when we're driving clean transportation forward with CTC, the first thing I'd like to address is the current data before federal intervention has a reduction of at least 85% or greater, except for the other mobile category. On-road mobile is 87%, area-wide sources is 100%, stationary sources is 96%. So for argument's sake, the population over the last 35 years indicates a minimum of 117% increase and a maximum of 197% increase. We've already achieved the goals that were set. But to follow up, I will say, when we push forward without purpose and with disregard for our low income or communities of color, you run industry out of town. People lose the opportunity to earn a living. When we implement major climate legislation, it's for what? We've already achieved the 85% goals for 2026. So there's a lot of people saying we're taking away the ability to have clean air, but we've already succeeded with this before the federal intervention in 2026. I'm going to leave that as my comment because that seems to be the matter at hand right now. But this does apply. If you think about this, it affects a small farmer, a family oil lease, a corporate farmer, or a large oil producer, or the trucker hauling fruits and vegetables. We are all being impacted by CARB, and we are going to pay the price at some point. At some point, we need to look back at the purpose and not be so quick to push so far forward, because the private sector is grasping this, and we don't have a problem with electricity or less emissions. We have a problem when we have to test trucks 4 times a year and pay that fee 4 times a year. And like you say, you have a citation. We don't even know how much that citation is. It might be cheaper just to pay the citation and never test your trucks. So with that being said, it's food for thought, something to review. I'm more than happy to speak with anyone off record in your office, but the numbers, I'm just taking these numbers from the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District and CARB websites. So thank you for that time.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone else's questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none?
Through the chair, I'm going to call for public comment on this item. Bakersfield, do you have any public comment?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comment?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno? Seeing none. In Fresno, we do have one online commenter, Christian Bisher.
Hi, good morning. My name is Christian Bisher. I live in Fresno. And so when Michelle started her presentation, I wanted to share that I wanted to ask the district and CARB if they thought it was needed to do some broader education efforts. When I talk on why California needs these mobile emission reductions or the off-road TRU emission reductions, when I talk to my neighbors or the people that I come in contact with in Fresno, they don't know why. When I'm reading the press releases or the email updates from our federal congressional representatives, it does not appear they know why. although they may just be choosing to play the political card and differentiate between red and blue. But if they believe California is doing this because they want to, and they're liberal, like there is no support. There will be no support for this. But if they understand that the district and CARB is required to go out and find these emission reductions so that they can show and meet attainment at the milestone in future deadlines, like then there's a reason why these are here. To the gentleman that made comments, and so yeah, so maybe I think there's a reason, a need for education, but then even here in the CAC group, maybe they need an updated education on these Clean Air Act requirements. Because CARB is not regulating out-of-state trucks or checking TRUs because they want to make it more difficult. They're doing it because they have to for the emission reduction purposes. And so I just think it's important to know that, and if people are unclear, maybe have the Air District or CARB staff share that with them. And then the last thing, Clean Air Coalition down in Southern California had a letter for SB 1064 by Bailey. And the clean truck checks that they were talking about, it's looking to push that from annually to every 2 years. And so if the district or CARB believe that would negatively impact that effectiveness of that program and the emission reductions necessary, I would encourage you to see it, give comment or give your input on that if you're not already. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further online comments.
Through
Do
the
you want to
chair,
respond to where's that coming from?
Mr. Sanders, Bakersfield. Through the chair, I'm not unclear on anything that was just noted, but the fact of the matter is, Stephen Cliff's goal was to reduce by 85%, and we've done that. If we want to do more, fine, but let's do it the right way. I have an electric vehicle. I have one of the coolest electric vehicles ever. I don't have a problem with it. My problem is when you try and go do oil field work in abandoned wells, and I want my oranges and apples and my fruits and vegetables to come in and not be rotten before they get there because of all the things that we're not allowed to do, because the truckers can't get somewhere, then I am in a space where I'm very uncomfortable, and I just don't agree with this. And a lot of people don't agree with it. We can still do this without making so many CTC inspections and so many of fees and so many, you can't even register a truck anymore in California without doing all these truck inspections. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm very clear. I agree that we should have clean air. I have an asthma problem myself. I like electric cars. I like less emissions, but we're really going hard at this, and we need to let industry do its thing. Otherwise, we're going to just be a bunch of people who don't have food, gas, tires, iPhones, purses, keychains, anything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Michelle, did you want to respond to anything to close?
No, I just, yes, thank you all for your comments and feedback. Also, thank you for allowing for us to accommodate me on the agenda for my later appointment. I really appreciate that you let me bump up and appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. And I hope that I can continue to talk with you all either via this forum or through others about the issues and the work that we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will go back to 8, correct? No.
I think we'll just swap. Actually, it's up to you, Chair. So if you'd like to go to 8, or we can just swap and move 8 where 11 was.
Okay, we'll do that. So we'll go to item number 9, update on attainment plans and rules. Mr. Frinkquist.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Tim Frankwist, Air Quality Planning Director. Just go through a quick highlights here. Starting with the 2006 24-hour PM 2.5 standard. On September 2nd, 2005, a complaint was filed against the EPA in federal court to compel a formal determination of whether the valley has attained the 2024 standard. On April 2nd, 2026, EPA did publish a proposed consent decree on the Federal Register, indicating the EPA erred in approving the 5-year extension based on a few different legal issues. What that does is knocks back the original attainment date for that standard to 2019. Right now, the proposed consent decree will require the EPA to make a final determination on that standard by May 8th. We've talked about this in the past, but if this goes forward, which it would likely would, we'd be required to do a 5% plan. As I had mentioned, those plans require us to reduce our direct or indirect PM 2.5 by 5% annually until we meet that standard. So it's a pretty challenging plan. So that's out there. We'll know more in just about a month. Turning to the 2012 annual PM 2.5 standard, the governing board did adopt our 24 plan in June of 24. We did request the 5-year extension at that time, and the discussion appointment for quite some time now. What that would have done is pushed out the attainment timeframe from December 31st, 2025 as 2030. Again, as we mentioned in the past, it's a really important 5-year extension that we get because we have just shown we can't attain that standard. So it's real critical that we do that. There was another notice of intent to sue filed by a local NGO on March 4th, 2026. That also will compel the EPA to make a decision in the next few months. Again, the 5-year extension is absolutely critical. There's been a lot of discussion with EPA and CARB, and so we're working diligently on that. And so we're optimistic that we can get that hopefully granted here in the next several weeks. Turning to the 1997 standard, really here, I think the big announcement is that the smog check contingency measure from CARB did get fully approved by the EPA last month, and so that will change the model year exemptions from 8 years to 7 years. Turning to kind of Rule 4905, the natural gas fired fan type central furnaces, the governing board did take action on this rule last month, and what this was to extend the compliance timeframes for manufactured homes. This was the fee in lieu of compliance with the 14 nanogram per joule limit. Like I said, the governing board did pass that rule last month, and so that amendment is now live. Going in front of the board this month, next week, is going to be Rule 4101, visible emissions. Rule 4101 restricts emissions from visible air contaminants to the atmosphere. Currently using EPA reference method 9. EPA did authorize an alternate method, alternate 152, and so the amendment would just simply allow the training for observers to go through like a virtual reality type training instead of doing the in-person CARB training. So that will go in front of the governing board next week. And then lastly, turning to our 2.5 commitments, the district continues our research and analysis on Rule 4901, the wood burning furnaces and fireplaces, and Rule 4550, conservation managed practices, with stakeholder meetings to be scheduled later this year. With that concludes my update. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments in Bakersfield? Any questions or comments in Modesto? Any questions or comments here, Mr. Truesdale?
I'd like an explanation on what the ALT-152 is. How is it different from the current requirements for visual emissions evaluators?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Right now, under EPA reference method 9, you have to go in every 6 months physically to a location to observe visual emissions to kind of basically train your eye. That's really difficult to get staff there, of course, physically and just, the time away from it. What this would allow is that you can take that training via virtual reality setting, if I'm not mistaken. So it just allows for a different way to do the method 9 training via the VR method.
That's much more convenient. Oh, I think it's a good move. And Ryan, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so historically, they, this service was provided by CARB. They would do it all throughout the state. Going back probably about 10 years ago, due to budget cuts, they reduced the number of trainings and certifications that they offered. And so that just resulted in us having to send staff to, like, for example, Fresno has to go to Bakersfield, Modesto has to go to Stockton. So we're just incurring a lot of costs. So this is actually going to save us a lot of time and resources, but at the same time, there were a lot of industry people that also needed to do this certification, and they were facing the same circumstances. And so this will benefit not only us, but them as well.
Well, I think it's a novel approach, taking advantage of new technology. And having gone through the VEE course a few times, this will be much more convenient. So, okay.
Yeah, we've been testing it out. It's been taking us anywhere from like 10, 15 minutes to do the certification. And, if you're familiar with the current process, it was probably, up to a few hours to complete.
Will this be a item on the board agenda that will be presented by staff, or will it be simply on the consent calendar?
I think we'll know by Friday for certain, or Thursday when the governing board agenda is published.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, through the chair, I bring this up and mention it because I have experience with this program. And I would personally encourage this body to make a consensus of support for this rule modification. Is it significant? In my mind, it's significant due to those who have to take the certification training. That's where I'm coming from. I would ask that the chair entertain the consensus.
Through the chair, yeah, I guess you could do just a consensus. We could take that back to our board, and in fact, even in the item that we're putting together, we can say that there was a consensus by the CAC that supports this rule modification.
So the chair can just go ahead then and recommend that she would like to, from the body, recommend that we support this direction in which the district has taken on the testing.
Right.
No, that would be great. I think that would show that you are innovative and you're doing things to make it better and not losing the real purpose. And so I agree with Dennis, and I think that would be great if the chair can just do that without us going through any legal fights.
Right.
That would be great.
So I'll go ahead and ask in Bakersfield, you could just give me a thumbs up if you are giving consensus for that. Okay, and then in Modesto. I can't tell if anybody has their thumbs. Okay, there we go. And then here in Fresno. It looks like that was consensus.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Were there any other questions or comments in Fresno? No? Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on to item 10, SB 253 and 261 presentation.
Yes, hello, can you all hear me?
Oh, yes.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you all see the title of the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Give me 1 second. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ivan Delgado. I am a staff air pollution specialist at ARB, CARP. But presentation today, it's about the climate disclosure laws, Senate bills. I'm going to refer to them as SB 253 and 261. So the California climate disclosure laws includes AB 253, 261, and an amendment with 219. The aim to improve transparency in corporate climate-related risk and emissions, and help inform customers and investors of climate-related business considerations. To be a little bit more specific, the 253, also known as the Climate Corporate Data Accountability Act, included entities conducting business in California exceeding $1 billion in annual revenues. Disclosures required by law are in 2026, this year, are for scope 1 and 2. A reminder for those who don't know, is scope number 1 include direct emissions from sources owned or controlled by the company. And scope 2 includes indirect emissions from the generation of a company's purchased energy. The following year, next year, is going to be also scope number 3 is going to be included. And scope number 3 includes indirect emissions not included in scope number 2 in the value chain of a company. For example, those emissions include business travel and the use of the products that they might be selling. Then scope 1, 2, and 3 are going to be due annually thereafter. They're going to be, you guys can use existing reporting standards, and there's going to be a fee authority for administration and implementation costs. I'm not going to go too much into the details, given that from my understanding, this SB 253 and 261 has been presented by ARB staff a few months ago. For SB 261, is also known as Climate-Related Financial Risk Disclosure Act. This is for entities conducting business in California exceeding $500 million in annual revenues. The disclosures are voluntary, starting in 2026. We want to provide a quick update on 261. The Ninth Circuit Court granted an injunction against the enforcement of this bill in November. Therefore, CARB is not enforcing that January 1st, 2026 is statutory deadline for the submission of the report, again, for 261. Nonetheless, given that it's voluntary, CARB is still accepting those reports. The idea is to start in 2026, and they're going to be due biannually every 2 years thereafter. It encourages the alignment with existing frameworks, including TCFD or ISB, but also allows the use of existing voluntary reporting frameworks. SB 219, it's an amendment of the previous two in terms of timeline, flexibility, and reporting adjustments. It clarifies that CARB will set the schedule for scope 3 disclosures, which begins in 2027, and also adds a parental level consolidation option for flexibility. Okay, now let's go over the updates for April 2026. For our staffing updates, which was requested, we would like to inform you that our branch has filled approximately 30 out of 40 positions in our branch. It is important to note that the entire branch is devoted to SB 253 and 261. An initial regulation was approved by CARB in February 2026. This regulation was designed to finalize items for the first year, with additional regulations to come. This includes definitions related to what companies this rule applies to, as well as the process for program fees assessment. It also finalized the initial SB 253 reporting deadline for scope 1 and 2, and this was set to August 10, 2026. Instructions on how entities submit their climate disclosure reports to CARB, as well as how to request a potential extension to the August 10 deadline, will be provided soon. We want to note that federal, state, and local government entities and companies that are majority owned by the government entities are exempted. Additionally, business entities that are subject to regulation by the Department of Insurance in California, or that is in the business of insurance in any other states, are also exempt, as well as nonprofit or charitable organizations. Last 2 weeks ago, we held a workshop. The day was March 23rd, that discussed concepts for the ongoing rulemaking efforts for SB 253. Visit our webpage if you scan the QR code here on the corner, you will get to our webpage. And if you go to workshops and meetings, you can watch the recording of the March 23rd meeting. Public comments are welcome officially until 4:13, but you can still submit your comments for consideration until June 1st. For SB 261, as previously stated, submissions are voluntary. Nonetheless, more than 140 entities have voluntarily submitted their climate risk disclosure as of March 2026. CARB is currently evaluating different options for how entities may submit their disclosure reports, and we welcome input from the public. Here is our contact information. The primary contact for the entire program, it's climate disclosure, arb.ca.gov, and our website is arb.cac.gov/climate disclosure. I also want to encourage people to, when they go to our webpage, subscribe so you can get the latest updates and reminders for meetings and workshops. For previous workshops, once again, as I mentioned, they're all posted in our webpage, so you can visit and rewatch the workshop if you were not able to make it March 23rd and previous ones as well. That's it for now. Thank you very much, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments in Fresno?
I have a question. Can you define the indirect emissions a little bit clearer for us?
Yes.
I'm referring to the scope 3, of course.
Yeah. For the scope 3, can be divided into 15 categories. Those are indirect emissions that are not included in scope number 2. For example, the transport and distribution of goods and services, or also the use of the products. If you're a car company, the indirect emissions will be the emissions that your car is gonna produce. Now, we understand that scope 3 are challenging to measure, and that's why we are organizing various workshops and meetings, and we are taking comments from the public. We want to remind everybody that this is a collaborative effort, and we are open to suggestions. Again, given that sometimes it's difficult, challenging to measure the exact amount of emissions, we are recommending also the use of proxies. And for examples, you provided examples. So yes, other questions?
I do have more questions. So you're saying that if I'm making a product, then every supplier that supplies me with things that go into the making of my product has to account for their emissions?
Uh, yes, there's no double dipping in when it comes to counting emissions. For example, as you mentioned, if you are buying products from other companies that are part of your bigger product, that will count as a scope 3 emissions, but the parent company need to submit those emissions too as a scope 1 or 2. When it comes to, actually, I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I'm Ryan Shawlin. I'm the Air Resources Supervisor on this team at CARB. And we're really looking for feedback, particularly on how Scope 3 emissions should be tracked. Again, this is not going to be required for the submittals in 2026, but the statutes do require us to start tracking that data in 2027. So we're looking for feedback on the best ways to do that. And some of that's outlined in the workshop that we had in March. But we're basically proposing a lot of different options to provide some flexibility for companies, understanding that that data is really difficult to track. And so, that might be as simple as just tracking how much you're spending for various inputs to the, work that you're doing from various suppliers. The more kind of stringent way to do that would be to get that data directly from those suppliers, which might be more of a long-term goal. So CARB's exploring different ways to make that more straightforward while companies are still gathering that data. And then when those systems become more robust, when we have more supplier-specific data to rely on, potentially rolling out different methods for tracking Scope 3 emissions as time goes on.
So then, Ryan, would you say that these measures are going to? I'm from a town that's disadvantaged. Okay, so can I go back home and tell my people, "Hey, look, this is what CARB's doing," and would you say that it's more likely to make things more expensive, less expensive, or stay the same?
So in the regulatory development process that's underway right now for SB 253, there's going to be an economic analysis associated with that, where we talk about, exactly what we expect the costs to be based on the kind of macroeconomic analysis that we do. Our goal, as Yvonne mentioned, is to make this as flexible and straightforward as possible so that the tracking is useful and straightforward. And, again, as Yvonne was outlining, that this falls on the companies that have the capability to do it. So those that have revenues greater than $1 billion. So I can't say exactly what, the directionality of those cost impacts, but our goal is to, minimize the cost and time efforts and to direct those at the companies that have the resources and sophistication to track that data.
Well, that's kind of laughable because did you say those revenues over $1 billion? Is that net or gross?
I'd have to, let me see. I don't know if do you know that on the top of your head, Yvonne?
I don't.
Yeah, so understanding that this is it's total annual revenue doing business in California. Exactly how that's determined will probably be fleshed out in the regulation. It's going to be, we're expecting some thousands of companies, so it's like 4,000 companies is a current estimate floating around.
I read that. How many of those companies are going to be here in 10 years?
I couldn't hazard a guess at that.
Would you like to wager?
I'll leave that to Polymarket. I'm not an expert in that.
That's all for me.
Yeah, Brian, it's gross. Not the topic is gross, but the gross income is 1 billion or 500 million. I think step 3 is going to go beyond what I believe your authority should be. And for us to tell you where we travel as part of that, one of those 16 items, is one of the 16 items of what color shirt you both have on and where did that shirt come from? And so now we're going to have to figure that out. But I think my personal opinion, we know some folks that play in the 500 million. And what you're going to do is raise the cost. But I think you're overstepping your domain as ARB, because if you're going to tell us where my food goes and how I got the food to the store, then I think it's time. I mean, I hear this and I go back to my first original comment to Michelle Buffington, who did a great job, is that maybe it's time we just shut it all down and let you folks realize that the food chain is not going to put up with this. The farmers are not going to put up with this anymore. I think you've overstepped your bounds of what to regulate and how to regulate it. And if anybody at CARB believes that that cost is not going to come down, I don't care if you got 8,000 big businesses in this state, the way it's going, there's no way you're going to be around there. So you're going to drop that number. Some legislature in Sacramento who has nothing to do except worry about other things, is going to craft a law that says now 200 million. So the number keeps dropping. But I think to exempt an insurance company, which I'd like to know the real rationales, I can understand you have no authority over the federal. Our federals aren't businesses. The federal agencies do what they have to do, and for you having control over that, or even your state agencies. Now, the way but the way California spends money fraudulently and everything else and not tracking is another question for the day. But I believe that your 16 items have gone too far. And if you're going to ask me what penicillin did I use, or what disease I have, or what my hospital did to quote and ask those buyers who sent syringes or non-syringes or masks, or I don't care what it is, what beds you put in, is that I think you guys have gone too far over the edge of trying to get emission reductions. And if all of this steams around the waiver issue and try to go to a 9 microgram, I think is another discussion. But what you're doing is you're literally destroying the businesses of this state. And when you do that, you lose jobs. And when you lose jobs and people can't pay their house bills or their medical, they have health problems worse than the air quality problem. Without a job and you can't pay your bills, your mind is going to go around in circles, creating all sorts of health issues. So, Brian, we look forward to having a real discussion on this. And let's make sure it's not on top of a board meeting of the Air Resources Board or on top of another board meeting that a bunch of us can't get involved in. But I think you've stepped over your domain, not you personally, gentlemen, but your agency has apparently nothing to do, I guess, after the waiver issue, except come up with 16 new items of how to make us pay as the community and all of that. So very disappointed in this, very disappointed that now we're going to have to tell you where and how our box and how our peaches went, how our chickens went, and what type of containers and what type of emissions that those containers create that were made in other states. Again, I guess what CARB wants is for you people not to eat, or for the people of this country not to eat. And I'll close with that comment because I think it's getting to a point that I think it's time to shut it all down and then let people worry about it, where their food's going to come. If it comes on a container from another country, then that's fine. But you're putting us really at that point right now where we're getting pretty well tired and we're fed up and we're tired of the high fuel cost and the clean fuels and everything we're doing to survive. And yet you keep coming up with new ideas because some legislator has got a loose screw. So thank you.
Can I
Any-
respond briefly?
Yes, please.
Well, I do disagree that CARB doesn't want to put food on your plate, but that's probably neither here nor there. I will just mention that on the scope 3 categories, the type of specificity that you were mentioning, Mr. Cunha, of like exactly what's being purchased and to whom it's being delivered, and that's not under consideration. We are trying to look at data that respects the kind of confidentiality that companies expect. So higher level data of how much is purchased, like the amount of money spent for given items, that sort of thing. More generic responses for emissions estimates for scope 3 emissions. About it, this is not unique to California, by the way. This is about 2/3 of the population of the world lives in countries where there is government required scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions reporting. California will be the first one to require this in the United States, but it's not at all uncommon internationally. The entire EU requires it, China, India, Australia. So just wanted to make that clarification.
Well, I'll respond back, Brian. I appreciate that very much, but I don't believe it. I appreciate your comments, but I don't believe that California is out of control across the country. Just because of another country does it, if another country, and I'll use this as an example of pretty much of how the people in this audience are going to listen to this. And it goes with a person's belief. And I'm going to say it the way it should be said. If every country in the country says that every man needs to be circumcised, then I guess that's what we're going to do in this state. We're going to follow what other countries do. So you're going to go around and check every man, okay? Just because another country does it, there's no reason why California should step out in front and hit our businesses with everything. It's to a point of frustration. And if you guys want to circumcise every man, then go for it, CARB. I want to know the enforcement process, okay? Thank you.
Mr. Chusto?
Yes. I just wanted to bring it to the attention of this group and to CARB that when we're talking about scope 3 emissions, there are many of these larger firms, international and domestically, that have helped us to initiate a voluntary carbon credit market for insets, which are used to offset the scope 3 emissions. One of the major benefactors of the scope 3 inset program has been agriculture through carbon sequestration, through the carbon farming methods that we have in place. So it's not a one-sided issue. There are two sides, and I personally have been involved in agricultural operations who have generated a significant amount of income, which is used to help address regulatory issues and costs. So there's two sides of every issue. I don't like regulations any more than anyone else, but with every issue, there brings opportunities. So I just wanted to state that there is an opportunity with the voluntary carbon market in this issue. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Any questions or comments in Bakersfield?
I have a comment on there. I have a business, but I guarantee you I don't make over $1 billion a year. But my concern is that it started at 1 billion down to 500,000, 500 million down to 200, down to 1 million. I see it dropping where it's going to affect everybody. But how do you keep track of all that? How many people say the 1 billion company? How many people they have to hire in order to keep track of all that and input? Is there an algorithm that you have to go into to make it more simpler? There's a bit of cost involved, but this is kind of beyond me on my comprehension on here because it's not going into more details. But I just know how big the bureaucracy is going to create. It seems like when we do come up with a new program through our state, it starts out real small. And before you know it, it's a huge issue of bureaucracy that new rules and new regulations come out. I just think that they need to table this myself personally, this here until we get our state stabilized. Because we don't know what's going to happen, it's going to shake out because it seems like even when we attack an industry or so-called, if you're a billionaire, pay a billionaire tax, and then it goes down to a millionaire tax on that. People leave or close down or move their corporate office out of state to a more friendlier state. They still do business in California, but they just move their corporate office, but just restrict it. It's like my little business I have. You know, I don't want to give out my secrets, but I put into the material. You know, if I may have a part, and I use rare earth, how much rare earth, the percentage of it, how much nickel, how much other material I use in the castings that make out from the foundry. That's secret. That's stuff that I don't want that to go out. And I don't know how that would involve the bigger companies, but everybody has proprietary business practice and what they use to become successful. But anyway, that's my concern. I just hope it doesn't, you know, this is furthermore discussed and get more informed on it. You know, what I have here, listening to the speaker, was I see issues, I see problems in there, but I think we need to be more get more in depth in it to get more information for our part. That's all I have to say, and I thank you very much.
Sure. I'll just note that the thresholds that we discussed, $1 billion and $500 million, that's statutory. So that was in the laws that were passed. So any changes to that threshold would have to go through the legislative process. That's not something CARB can control. So as far as the concern about, you know, that reducing over time, that would have to happen at the legislative level. Not that that necessarily alleviates your concern, but just noting that that's, you know, not subject to what we're working through in the regulation right now. Also noted that, you know, there is understand the concern about submitting confidential data. So we'll be looking to ways to respect companies' confidential data. Most of this is rolled up to a high enough level for big enough companies that that's less of a concern, but understand that especially on scope 3 emissions, there might be, you know, certain sectors that have confidential business information that they don't want to share. So we'll be looking for that feedback in the, you know, regulatory development process to make sure that confidential business information can be protected whenever possible. So appreciate that concern.
Also, I would like to add that this is a collaborative effort. Right now, CARB is organizing several workshops and meetings, and we are asking for the public's input. Your opinions, your concerns are valid, and we want to encourage you all to go to our website and submit your comments for consideration.
Thank you. Any questions or comments in Bakersfield? I'm sorry, Modesto.
Madam Chair,
You're going to make it quick, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there going to be a public workshop in the San Joaquin Valley, a public workshop or a real workshop where we can see eye to eye?
None that are scheduled now. All of our workshops to date have been over Zoom. I will take back the feedback to the team that it would be helpful to have something in person. Obviously, CARB in a lot of workshops and regulatory development process, we do try to prioritize in-person workshops. It's obviously a balance because Zoom workshops are easier for folks to attend, but you miss some of the connection and the opportunity to meet with people in the field. So to answer your question, none planned right now. I will take that feedback back to the group.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I'm going to call for public comments on this item. Bakersfield, do you have any public comments?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments?
No public comments in Modesto.
Are there any public comments in Fresno? Seeing none. Don't see any indicated online as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you all for the time today.
I did kind of scribble all over my agenda, so we are going to item 8 now, correct? Okay, so item 8, verbal report from California Air Resources Board.
I believe Shayla should be joining.
Hello. Thank you all. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much for your time and attention on the various items that we have. I know that CARB is taking up a decent chunk of space on the agenda today. So I will try to not drag out my updates too long. But I do have our regular verbal updates today. As a reminder, I am the lead SIP planner for the San Joaquin Valley in the Central Valley Air Quality Planning section at CARB. So I will start with some regulatory updates from last month, March 2026, and then provide a list of upcoming meetings, grant solicitations, and workshops for April and May. The board held a public meeting on March 26, 2026, and heard 2 consent items and 1 discussion item. The board adopted the proposed motor vehicle emissions budgets for the San Joaquin Valley for the 75 ppb ozone national ambient air quality standards, and subsequently permanently adopted the emergency vehicle emissions regulations, which clarify that earlier long-standing regulations remain operative as previously adopted. And the discussion item included an update and a proposed resolution on criteria pollutant planning efforts in response to the federal government's actions around the Clean Air Act waivers. And additional information on these 3 items that were heard can be accessed at the board meeting agenda linked in this update. Next, I'll be reviewing those upcoming public workshops, meetings, hearings, and regulatory updates. So the Zero Emission Assurance Project, sorry, that's a mouthful, which was funded by the Budget Act of 2022, went live on March 30th, 2026. This project assists Californians who have purchased a used zero emission vehicle or near zero emission vehicle through a CARB incentive program and suspect that their vehicle's battery or fuel cell components are in need of major repair. So the incentive programs include the Driving Clean Assistance Program, Clean Vehicle Assistance Program, and Drive Clean in the San Joaquin. Additional details and eligibility are provided at the link in today's update for those who are interested in potentially getting a repair that had participated in these programs. And next, CARB staff will host a virtual webinar on April 8th, 2026 from 2 to 3:30 p.m. on the newly released 2025 Natural and Working Lands Carbon Inventory. This inventory estimates carbon stocks and carbon stock change from lands in California, as well as harvested wood products. And CARB staff will present the results and publicly available data to the public at this webinar, and answer any clarifying questions. Next, a joint meeting will be held by CARB, the California Transportation Commission, and the Department of Housing and Community Development on April 9th, 2026 at 1 p.m. The meeting will take place both in person at the Bay Area Metro Center chambers and virtually on Zoom. Public comments can be submitted in advance of the meeting by emailing ctc@catc.ca.gov. And all of that information is provided in the updates in today's agenda. And next, CARB is soliciting grant applications for 2 administrators. One will implement funding allocated to the Clean Off-Road Equipment Voucher Incentive Project, also known as CORE, which is a point of sale incentive to reduce the purchase price of zero emission off-road heavy duty equipment. The second grant administrator will implement funding allocated to the Clean Truck and Bus Voucher Incentive Project, referred to as HVIP, which is a point of sale incentive to reduce the purchase price of zero emission on-road heavy duty vehicles. The 2 administrators selected will be responsible for conducting day-to-day business of running the respective programs. And both solicitations are open to federal, state, or local government entities or agencies, local air districts, and California-based nonprofit organizations. Applications for the CORE and HVIP solicitations are due by 4 p.m. Pacific on May 12th, 2026, and can be accessed at the links in today's update. CARB will hold one solicitation workshop on April 14th, 2026 at 11 a.m. for both grant solicitations, at which time staff will be available to answer questions that potential applicants may have. And the registration link for that workshop is also provided in today's update. Next, CARB has released a request for proposal seeking qualified consultants to co-develop and deliver an interactive training and train the trainer program that supports agency-wide implementation of CARB's community engagement model. And this is being done in partnership with community collaborators. Proposals are due by April 16th, 2026, 2 p.m. Pacific. And those applications can be accessed in the link in today's update as well as additional information. Next, CARB hosts monthly evening community meetings to provide updates on clean transportation mobility programs, incentives, and regulations. The April 21st meeting, excuse me, will cover charging infrastructure for clean heavy-duty vehicles and fleets, CARB's Air Quality Improvement Program funding plan, or the AQIP funding plan, guidance and access to California climate investments funding, and a new construction emissions reduction tool. Meetings take place virtually on Zoom monthly from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific. And a registration link for the April meeting is provided in today's update. CARB invites members of the public to participate in a public webinar on April 22nd, 2026 from 1 to 3:30 p.m., which covers vehicle testing requirements for the Clean Truck Check program that began in October 2024. The reporting database for the program, which is called CTC-VIS, underwent substantive updates in October of last year, and these will be discussed. The webinar is part of a continuing series of trainings that are focused on the requirements for truck owners registered in California. And a registration link for this virtual webinar is included in today's update as well. Next, a public webinar will also be held on April 23rd, 2026 from 1 to 2 p.m. on updates to the statewide emission inventory of isolated structure and vehicle fire incidents not associated with wildfire. CARB staff will present an updated methodology, including the use of recent activity data and consumption, fuel loading, and emissions factors. Updated emissions include both criteria pollutants and greenhouse gases. The webinar will take place virtually on Zoom, and the registration link can be accessed in today's update. The board will be meeting on April 23rd or 24th, 2026, and the public agenda will be available at the linked CARB webpage, the linked webpage provided in today's update, 10 days prior to the meeting. And additional late-breaking items include the residential wood combustion area source emissions inventory methodology for public review, the public workshop for collecting commercial cooking activity data across California, and newly available public documents and information for proposed amendments to the landfill methane regulation, as well as proposed amendments to the advanced clean fleets and low carbon fuel standard regulations. As I mentioned, these are late breaking items, so we did receive the notices after we finalized our updates into today's agenda. So we will be sure to share additional information and relevant links on those 4 items with Katrina following today's meeting, and get that additional information sent over to you. And so I know I kind of sped through that a little bit just to save some time, but please feel free to let me know if you have any questions, comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns in Bakersfield?
Yes.
Go ahead.
John Sanders. Hey, I have 2 questions. In the letter from Stephen Cliff on January 28th, they talked about advancing clean air for communities. Can I get it? I just want to know, when SB 1137, does that mean that someone can move in within, someone can put a sensitive receptor close to oil wells that makes it to where they cannot produce oil? That's my first question. And we don't have to answer this today. We could just respond through Katrina. And the other thing is the improving organizational operations criteria. What is that criteria that makes a perfect organizational operation? Those are the 2 questions I had, because I'm a little confused on both those matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else in Bakersfield? Go ahead.
Sorry, I just have a follow-up question on the second one. Where were you referring to the organizational operations criteria from, just so I can get a better understanding of who to ask the question to?
So on January 28, 2026, Dr. Cliff sent a letter about what they're going to drive in 2026, 2027. And towards the bottom of the letter, we had improving organizational opportunities. And I think it was in order to make sure that the people they're funding are doing what they're supposed to. I'm just curious what the criteria is. What's it say? Does it mean that they're highly organized and they have an audit trail, or does it mean that they send their people out to send their people out to badger the opposition into submission? I'm not sure which one it is, but it's
Gotcha.
occurring. So
yeah, thank you for clarifying that. That was also from the memo. I'll definitely pass these along and see what info we can get for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in Bakersfield? Seeing none. Anyone in Modesto? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to Fresno. Anyone with questions, comments?
Well, I just one comment is thank you. This was a very comprehensive report. I know there was a lot of information in it, but I have notes and I look forward to the follow-up that'll be sent to us. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so
Sheila.
much.
I still need that. Sorry, I turned my mic off. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to item number 12. Update on alternatives to open ag burning and discuss advocacy efforts for incentive funding.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Todd Young, Director of Grants and Incentives here at the Air District. I'm accompanied by Mark Montalongo, the district's Director of Policy and Government Affairs. We're here this morning to provide an update on the alternative to open ag burning, and then to discuss recent advocacy efforts related to the incentive program that goes along with that regulation. So just by way of a brief background, as you know, the San Joaquin Valley is implementing a first of its kind state mandated phase out of agricultural open burning in partnership with the California Air Resources Board. We're on track to eliminate more than 98% of historically open burn materials through the prohibition. It's really critical and crucial as part of this process to develop and deploy new alternatives that replace the traditional open burning of agricultural material. And that's something that we've been involved in for the last several years under this program. Through strong advocacy efforts and recognizing the significance of the transition here in the San Joaquin Valley, several years ago and back in 2021, we were able to advocate for $180 million in state funding to support the district's Ag Burn Alternatives Grant Program. Since that time, since we received the funding, it has been fully expended. We've gone through all of this funding, and no additional funding has been received during the past 2 fiscal years from the state. We've been sort of cobbling together the program with local funding wherever we can find it. We worked several years ago to get this included as an eligible cost under the Community Air Protection Program, the state's AB 617 CAP funds. So we've been able to use that for the last several years, but we've really seen no significant investment from the state since that initial $180 million back in 2021. It's been fully expended. We haven't received any additional funding, like I said, from the state over the past couple of years. And unfortunately, without timely legislative budget action, and like this is the time right now where all of this is sort of being discussed and is being formulated for the state budget, we risk losing critical air quality gains that we've made over the last several years. And the result for this would be an imposition of unreasonable burdens on agriculture and impeding the state's environmental policy goals moving forward. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want you to pay close attention to the box there, sort of on the right-hand side of that first graph. That shows that since we launched the Ag Burn Alternatives Grant Program and adopted the phase-out strategy, that we've seen a significant reduction in agricultural burning. The graph on the right shows the increase of agricultural woody waste that has been processed through the grant program, which pays for these alternatives. When I say these alternatives, I'm talking about chipping and shredding of agricultural material, reincorporating that where it's possible into the soil, and then using what we call beneficial reuse alternatives. And we've been involved in developing multiple beneficial reuse alternatives throughout the years. So you can see it's resulted in a significant amount of reduction in agricultural burning over the last several years. As I talked about, there's a critical funding gap. We've spent about $240 million in total investments since we started the program. This has resulted in 327,000 acres of material going through the program, diverting almost 9 million tons of materials from open burning. Throughout this process, our governing board has always been focused on strong support of small valley growers, understanding the significant economic challenges that this presents to, agricultural organizations in general, but really it's an undue burden on the smaller growers throughout the San Joaquin Valley. These practices can sometimes add thousands of dollars per acre, those chipping costs, shredding costs, and then cost to reincorporate all of this material into the soil adds a significant amount of costs to dealing with agricultural waste. What we've seen recently is a significant increase in demand in the program, which is kind of why we are in the situation we're in today, where our funding is running very low in the program. As a reminder, the Valley is the only region in the state that's subject to these full phase out mandates. And without additional sustained funding, particularly from the state and federal government, the growers are going to face a lack of viable compliance pathways under the phase out. Unfortunately, the governor's proposed budget, or what we've seen to date for 26-27, does not include funding for the program, which is now at risk of immediate shutdown, sort of given that high demand that we've seen and little remaining funding. In fact, we're forecasting that the existing program, while we were expecting it to last throughout this entire fiscal year, we're actually now forecasting, because of the increase in interest that we've seen in the program, we're forecasting to be out of funding by mid to late April. So in the next couple of weeks, we're forecasting to run out of money. So that would mean that we would have to stop accepting new applications really in the coming days for this program. All this leads to, we are considering some emergency governing board action at our next governing board meeting. I don't want to get out in front of our governing board and presuppose what we're going to do, but we are considering a variety of options, including some stopgap funding that would potentially get us through the end of the fiscal year. And then any new funding for the program would be considered in our 26-27 budget efforts that are going to our board in June. We're also considering other things like potentially ways to stretch out our available funding, potentially reducing some of the incentive amounts that we pay under the program. It's not ideal, but we feel like in certain cases, some money for the program is better than no money at all. So we're looking at a variety of options, and we're going to be taking an item to our governing board next week to discuss this and potentially get some relief in the program. So what happens if the state legislature doesn't act? We risk losing those critical air quality gains that we've seen over the last several years through the reduction in agricultural burning. The program, like I said, would face imminent shutdown. It would compromise the continued feasibility of the ag burn phase out and all the progress that we've made to date. We would be foregoing air quality and public health benefits in the nation's most impacted region. And it would really cause those severe and unreasonable economic impacts to the Valley agricultural community, that including jobs lost and impacts to the regional economy. This would also lead to an increase in abandoned farmland, pest infestation, an increase in disease, increased fire risk, and localized and regional community impacts through potential open burning. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark, and he's going to discuss some of our recent advocacy efforts and potential strategies moving forward.
Thanks, Todd. Just want to touch on this last slide here, our recommended state budget action. So we have been actively working with a broad coalition of Valley and other stakeholders to ensure our funding priorities have been communicated. This process started last December of last year. Going to Sacramento and meeting with our Valley delegation and key folks in the legislature to ensure we, prioritize some funding for this critical program. We are requesting $75 million annually for the next 5 years to sustain implementation of the phase out of agricultural open burning. We have had electeds in the legislature that have included this as a funding request into the budget. So hopefully, it makes it in. This funding will basically support processing of over 2 million tons of material annually, achieving over 20,000 tons of emission reductions, while also, advancing the state's climate and soil and water benefits. In recognition of the critical clean air incentive funding needs in the valley, the CAC took action to support the district's funding clean air priorities last February, which included farmer and ag burn alternatives, in addition to clean vehicle and equipment funding at the February CAC meeting. Given where we are in the state budget process right now, it's highly critical, given that, as Todd mentioned, the January proposed budget by the governor came out and it didn't include funding for this critical program. The next stage in the budget process is the governor will be releasing his next budget, which is a May revision in the middle of May. So right now is a critical time. We have been in Sacramento. We have been, advocating for this program and the critical need for it. But given the immediate need for this critical ag burn alternatives grant program, it may be more important and timely for the CAC to communicate with the state leadership on this specific funding that is needed, consistent with the CAC direction in prior months. So, for example, it could be in the form of a letter, but right now is a critical time to kind of make our voices be heard. So we have a critical need here, and I'd like to turn it back to the chair for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from Fresno? Go ahead, Mr. Tuttle.
Mark, could I ask, how's it being received? And can I ask what legislators are making ask? You mentioned.
Yeah, there's several folks in our Valley delegation that have put these funding requests forward, and it's been bipartisan, all up and down the state.
I think coupling it with a letter from here seems appropriate.
Mr. Tristo?
I wanted to ask, at the groundwater protection agencies, the GSAs, groundwater sustainability agencies, has those organizations been approached for support on this issue, since we're seeing many fallowed acres of, in this case, I've seen walnuts that have been pulled out.
I definitely think there's a recognition of the issue with the GSAs. We have been in contact with several of them, not all of them. And there is an understanding that this issue goes beyond air quality and has all of these other impacts to, groundwater sustainability and all of those other sort of negative impacts with this situation. We don't have any specific approach, working with the GSAs, but we have been in consultation with them, and there's a recognition that these are issues that need to be dealt with on a regional basis.
Having been involved in issues like this in the past, and I have a great deal of respect for the district's ability in these areas, but my curiosity goes to the response of the Farm Bureau and the response to many of the agricultural commodity groups, specifically those in the nut industry, about also assisting with this funding issue. And then I know that there's the statewide land repurposing program, which provides funding to the GSAs for alternatives for ag land that's being taken out of production. Now, the funding is tight on that, but these modifications to the surface land specifically and pulling out trees are something that I don't believe funding for that has come up before. And I'm not afraid to put forth this concept. They'll say no, but it's like, hey, okay. Those are my comments on it, because I just want to make sure that the whole landscape is made aware of this, because I think this program is extremely critical.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate those comments. And we have worked in consultation with some of the other programs that provide that, like you're saying, the repurposing of ag lands. We would provide some funding. We would essentially co-fund some projects with those agencies where we would provide some of the funding to CHIP and incorporate the existing material. And then they would get additional funding to repurpose that land. So we have had some collaboration, I guess you could say, with those agencies.
Well, I'm all for taking some funding from the state water board and using it for this.
Thank you.
Second that.
Yes.
Mr. Cunha.
I'll make it fast and quick. On your presentation, Todd, the 242 million was air district. The part that maybe could be on that line, the grower community has put in this on top of that. So it doesn't look like it's only been the air district or the state putting monies, the farmers, just like the farmer program, you know, the tractor, a percentage of it is put by the grower. So maybe we can add that line in there and says by the air district, and then also the grower community has put this amount in. So totaling maybe something like 400 million.
Here, yeah.
You know, number two, I would like to move that we forward a letter strictly on this comment here, the emergency language that is used for this specific ag burn issue, not the farmer side or the other stuff, but strictly of what you guys are recommending to the board. So I'd like the chair to have a motion to direct the chair to sign a letter that would forward it to the board for next week, supporting the staff's recommendations from what you are proposing. I think is really much in line, and that go to the governor. Our Valley legislators are all behind it, and everybody. So I think this letter needs to go to Lauren Sanchez and to the governor and to maybe the Speaker of the Assembly, Mr. Robert Rivas, who knows agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cunha. I totally agree. I think that missing fact was the fact that this is in no way 100% paid for by the Air District. These measures, all of our grant programs require buy-in from the applicants. This one's no different. In fact, the applicants are putting in anywhere between 30 to 70% of the cost of these projects. So absolutely heard you on that one, and we can provide that additional context.
Thank you.
So that you made a motion, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a second on that? Before we vote on it, though, I will open it up for comments to the other two locations, but just wanted to see if there was a second. We do have a second. So with that, any other questions, comments, or concerns in Bakersfield? Oh, you had one? I'm sorry. I didn't see. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you, Todd and Mark, for your presentation and for all the work and your staff members, for all the work that goes into doing this and representing San Joaquin Valley like you do. For I'm ag centric, but for all of us, I mean, it's really important that we get this money to continue these measures. And I just wanted to thank you for doing all of that.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions, comments, concerns in Bakersfield? See none. Any in Modesto?
For the chair, it's Chris Savage. I'm supportive of the motion. I echo Laura's comments about the work that the district does in Sacramento to achieve funding. I have a more fundamental question, which is more I'm going to put on the table and then we can deal with it later if it's okay, which is in programs like this that rely so heavily on funding to make them financially viable, we need to start to consider building in compliance off-ramps into programs like this when that funding no longer is available to make these financially viable rules to implement. This was a conversation when some of these existing rules went into place. And I think there was optimism that we'd have perpetual funding to go help this out due to public benefit. The reality is that is not going to be the case. So in circumstances where those dollars are no longer available to us, we need to consider what that compliance off-ramp might look like for the period of time where that funding is not always present. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you can.
Call for public comment Bakersfield, do you have any public comments on this motion?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comment?
No public comments in Modesto.
Seeing no members of the public in person, we do have one online comment. Christian Bisher.
Hi, good morning again. My name is Christian Bisher. I live in Fresno. So I 100% support funding for open burn alternatives. But I would like to remind everyone that the law to stop open burning was passed in 2003 and the associated district rule in 2005. The district requested waivers to not enforce that in 2010, 2015, and 2020. And it was not until CARB finally denied the request to waive it in 2020 that open burning had the abrupt ban. If at any point between 2003 and 2020, the district had started to slowly phase in open burning reductions, like the abrupt stop and the large financial impact would not have been felt. It would have been spread out. And so I would just like everybody to acknowledge the connection between delaying enforcement or implementation and then the increased cost when the time to do it now is significantly reduced. Multiple times today I heard, and it is a legitimate statement that there is cost to businesses. And then the district talked about extensions to attainment deadlines are critical. But if we continue to delay these emission reductions, the chance that businesses and industry are going to experience significant financial impact, in my opinion, will increase because you're putting those needed emission reductions over a shorter period of time. And so if there are areas, because we still have plans that we have to meet, potentially a new PM 2.5 standard if it stays, there are sources of emissions that are not being regulated or they are exempt. The sooner those are identified and slow incremental reductions begin, the less likely we're going to experience something significant like the abrupt open burn ban. So just please acknowledge the connection between delaying emission reduction implementation and the cost associated with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Shiraz here. Can I respond to that just really quick? Just for clarification purposes, I mean, there was not a delay. There was since 2005, there's been a number of iterations where there has been a transition of phase out and a number of categories were already banned from open burning. So it's not that we waited until 2020 to delay that. There were obviously technological issues. The cordon material, as you know, there's significant wiring, metal wiring that's very difficult to handle with equipment. Part of the funding that was received back in 2001 through the state, $30 million of that was used to develop new technology and new equipment that can actually handle this type of equipment. So it's not that the district was delaying. There was a significant transition. And in 2021 was the final phase out of those more technological challenging crops. Just wanted to kind of correct the record on that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. And
Call for roll. Okay, Mr. Cunha,
Yes.
Ms. Gutile. Yes. Mr. Hufdahl,
Here. Yes.
Mr. Hufdahl. Oh, thank you. Mr. Savage,
Yes.
Mr. Rios,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Ms. Eggers,
Yes.
Mr. Tristo,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mr. Crier,
Yes.
Ms. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Cantu,
Yes.
through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you. I just want to thank you. I know we finished already, but I have seen the district at work in both DC and Sacramento, and I know that you guys do other outreach there as well, other than what I've been privy to seeing. So thank you all for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
We have item 13, AB 617 implementation updates. Stephanie.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the CAC. Good afternoon. I'm excited to be here to provide an update on AB 617 implementation since our last CAC meeting. I have a few things, and then we also have our partners at CARB to give an update. We do continue to meet with all 4 of our CARB selected community steering committees to implement 617 across the valley. A few exciting updates. We are just in a really great, kind of exciting phase of implementation where we get to see right now a lot of the projects that we have been working towards, especially the longer term ones, come together. So on April 22nd, we will be in Shafter for a ribbon cutting ceremony to celebrate the completion of a paving, sidewalk, and road improvement project in the La Colonia neighborhood with different project partners, which will include Kern County Public Works. They've been working really hard to wrap up this project, and with community members. Another huge milestone that we have is in March, our Stockton committee supported moving forward with a really significant project to replace 2 Tier 0 switcher locomotives at the Port of Stockton to electric units and install necessary infrastructure. This is a hugely significant project in terms of its ability to reduce emissions in the community, but also it really is just a first of a kind of leadership project that the port is taking on that we hope can lead to broader adoption at the port and elsewhere. I also did want to provide an update on our Clean Air Rooms program. As a reminder, that is our program that we have that gives residents free air purifiers to help set up what we call a clean air room, especially in episodes of poor air quality. We do still have funding through our AB 617 communities. And so as we've headed into spring, we've really ramped up the outreach over the past couple of weeks, especially with our outreach and communications team. In working with our community steering committees, we just mailed out actually over 40 postcard. We did a mailing campaign where we mailed out over 40,000 postcards to residents in our 4 AB 617 communities. And we're getting a ton of calls. They hit mailboxes over the weekend, and already this week we got over 700 applications come through for the program. So we're seeing a huge, push and great returns on that outreach campaign. Also related to the Clean Air Rooms program, I know that most of you are aware that we are unfortunately out of funding for our valley-wide program. Though we did have kind of a small amount of funding that came in from the interest on that program. And so we have what that means for us is we have a really unique opportunity, and we have a small amount of units that we want to take out to events that in these next few weeks in spring. And these are specifically for outside of our AB 617 communities. So if you all know of any events or groups that could be interested in us going to distribute a few of these purifiers, let us know or let Jamie know, and we'll make sure that they're kind of lined up for, again, we're hoping to get these units out before summer because we do see a lull when it gets really hot. We don't go to as much, school's out. So we really hope to get a lot of events lined up in the spring. And with that, I am happy to pass over to our partners over at CARB. I believe we have Brian Moore with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. And good afternoon, CAC members. I just have 2 quick updates. This past March 25th, we had our 3rd meeting of our AB 617 Community Air Protection Consultation Group, which is our multi-stakeholder group that helps direct the program as we evolve through the years. So they were able to define and finalize a charter for how the group was going to operate, which was great. And their next step is developing a work plan moving over the next 3 or 4 years, focusing on the next update to our guidelines, which we also call the blueprint. So that's where that group is. And just my second update is to let you all know that I actually will be transitioning to our Transportation and Toxics Division at CARB. So I will no longer be working in the AB 617 program. I just want to say it's been great working with you all, and it does really help. I listen, to these meetings to hear different point of view from the Valley, on not only AB 617, but all the other CARB programs. I find it really beneficial. So it's been great.
Can we deny that? We're going to deny that. We're going to call CARB and tell them, no, you're not leaving. Okay. You
Sure.
say where you
Oh.
are, you're fine.
I guarantee we have some great staff that will fill in behind me, and you will not remember me after a few meetings. They're great, and things will go smoothly. And with Stephanie and Ryan and the team at the Air District, the program is in great hands, and the progress has been really impressive over the last 8.5 years I've been working with the Valley. So again, I appreciate you all, and thank you for the kind words, Mr. Cooney. I appreciate it.
Through the chair, if I could really quickly, and Brian, you didn't see this, but I had the same reaction as you when I heard the news. And we do wish Brian well, but we're on it. Honestly, I just really want to thank Brian for all of his support. He has been working with our Valley communities really since the start of 617. I know Brian came out to a lot of meetings in person in Shafter and Fresno, and really just want to thank him for his commitment to our Valley communities and also to this group. I just want to thank Brian especially for coming to give updates and just his huge support of CAC. He's been really great about responding to questions and providing follow-up, even for things that weren't necessarily related to the 617 program and OCAP. So just wanted to thank Brian. I did promise when I heard the news, I was like, Brian, you have to let me embarrass you at some point and just recognize all the great work. So just want to thank Brian again and wish him well. And I know he's going to be doing great things over in the Toxics and Transportation Division.
Cool. Thanks, Stephanie.
Any questions, comments in Fresno?
I'll make it quick. Again, if there's any way we can figure out how to delay this process, but I do want to personally thank you. You've been a very personal person to the people with the 617 in the meetings you have attended. I've heard nothing but the greatest comments of professionalism and caring, and it wasn't a fake put up. So, but you did one heck of a job for CARB, and maybe they need to move you up into the president's office to help with some of those things. But again, thank you for all the work on 617. You and our district, I think, made a great team, but you made it happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you. No, it's been great working with community members. I think I've probably taken more than I've given to the program. It's been not to be dramatic, but almost a life-altering working with all these communities throughout the state, in the Bay Area and the Central Valley. And it's changed the way I view regulations and just my general life. It changes the way I think it's influenced the way I try to raise my kids, so they're aware of all the things going on in the state and how they can be more empathetic people, as they grow up. So I appreciate it all. It's been great.
Any questions, comments, concerns in Bakersfield? Seeing none. Any in Modesto? Seeing none. And I'm just going to second what Manuel said. So thank you. You will definitely be missed here. Next, we have item number 14, Outreach and Communications Report. Jamie Holt.
Save the best for last, right?
course.
Real quick, it is that time of year when we are very busy with events. We're out in the world. So if you're at an event, please go and look for our booth, whether it's an Earth Day event, kind of end of school carnivals, all of that's going on. So we're out there in the world. The other thing that we're looking at that we'll probably bring to this group in the coming months is our annual report to the community. We will be taking it to the governing board this month. They see a draft of it. So if you walk in my office, it's filled with all of these spreads, moving things around in paper. So we're working on that as well. And it has a great write-up of all the great work being done by this organization and by everyone throughout the Valley.
Any questions or comments for Jamie here in Fresno? Seeing none. Any in Bakersfield? Any in Modesto? Thank you so much. That was quick. Now we have CAC member comments. We'll go ahead and start with Modesto. Any CAC member comments? See none. Any in Bakersfield? Also seeing none. Any here in Fresno, of course.
I just want to thank the chair for her allowing me to talk today. And I know I went overboard, but again, I want to thank all the members and the staff for at least allowing us to present our points. But thank you, Chair, for allowing that to happen very much.
I just wanted to make the comment that CARB has devoted a great deal of staff time to the CAC I counted at least 5 individuals who gave reports today. I think that's phenomenal. It was all very good, and it's a complete 180-degree turnaround from what we had experienced in the past. So my suggestion is that the message be carried to CARB that we appreciate the participation that they've given us.
Agreed. Yeah. Mr. Tuttle?
Briefly, echo what Dennis just said. Last time I was here, it's been a while. It was their last meeting, I think, that they're going to attend, and then they're going to start attending like quarterly or something like that. I remember we pushed back a lot, and it seemed all afternoon. It was all CARB presentations. And so anyways, that was the last time I was here.
Yeah.
They weren't going to come back.
Right. Yeah, I too am glad that they're still participating and trying to help us get the answers to questions that we have so that we can go out to our respective areas and try to advocate for some of these changes or try to make changes where possible, where it makes sense that maybe they're not looking at. So I think it's very valuable. And I think they understand that. And I think that's why maybe the agency had a change of heart and is continuing to.
I just wanted to make it clear that I think we should send CARB a note or a letter explaining that we appreciate their effort.
Sounds good. I agree. Next, we have Manuel's favorite, item number 16, volunteer to present report during governing board meeting.
I'd be honored to, and it's usually very short at the board meetings. Isn't it, Shiraz? I'm really short, huh?
Wow, okay, that's interesting. Okay, so we do have a volunteer, Mr. Cunha. And then we'll go ahead and adjourn, and the next meeting will be Tuesday, May 5th at 10 a.m. in our respective areas. Thank you all. Thanks for sticking it out.
Thank you.